It's podcadzo.
We've just been doing black so far. I want to do some gray ones too.
It was the pun purposeful, Summer of Peril, or is that a happy accident with the band?
Yeah, so it's really interesting the way that I came up with the name. Whenever I was younger, me and my buddies would always jam after school and stuff. We'd come hang out at my house. My house was like right down the road from our high school, and my buddy Ryan is like, if we ever start a band, we should call it Summer of Peril. And I was like, that's such a sick name. And this whole time I'm thinking he's saying Summer of Peril. And he was saying Summer of Peril.
Yeah.
So like after like the third time we mentioned it, I was like, yeah, dude, Summer of Peril is such a sick name. And he was like, that's not what I was saying. He said, I was saying Summer of Peril. And I was like, oh. And we came to like a funny conclusion of like, okay, well, like whoever starts a band first in the future, like gets claim on the name, and if anything, if we really want to get funny with it, we can both use both. You go Summer Apparel and I go Summer of Peril, and we can run with it.
That's hilarious. Yeah, the first time we played together, someone pointed that out. I was like, oh yeah, it does sound like Summer Apparel. It's good.
When we first started, a lot of people would be like, "What's your band called?" Like Summer Apparel. And oh, Summer Apparel. I'm like, no, Summer of Apparel. Close though. A little bit of a tongue twister.
Is there a Summer Apparel band?
I have no idea. Probably. Okay. I could imagine somewhere out there.
That's a strong name too.
Yeah.
Summer Apparel.
It's cool. It's still a cool name. I feel like that'd be a better like pop punk band name.
Yeah.
Yeah, indeed. A good pop punk. But yeah, for your type of music, Summer of Peril is a dope name.
I also get a lot of people asking if we're like, they assuming that we're like a metal band or like a hardcore band or something.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, no, we play shoegaze. like alternative rock shoegaze, nothing crazy.
That show we did with you guys at the bowling alley, that was your first show you did?
Yeah, that was our
Summer
first ever show. Yeah, I think it was like mid-October of last year. So it's weird to think we like just hit a year of playing shows.
Yeah, that was our second show as Podcadzo as this band.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we
the first one was in August. Yeah, that was an interesting show. That wasn't our best.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely.
We've talked about it a little bit on this pod. I was in a horrible mood at the end.
I thought you guys sounded great.
Oh, thanks. I did it to you guys. I was amazed it was your first show.
Yeah,
it was super
didn't
tight.
Seem like a first show.
I was shitting bricks. I was so nervous. I hadn't performed live or like played music for people in probably 6 or 7 years at that point.
Yeah.
And so definitely not as like as an adult with my own band, with my own new music that I had written and stuff.
For sure.
So I was a nervous wreck. Like I think we did goof really bad up on Remington, second song in the set. I ended up like, we got me and our first drummer we had got out of sync, and I started freaking out, and I like dropped my pick, and I had to like pick it up, and like our drummer he was about to stop playing. I was just like, keep going, please.
We can pull it out, baby.
Yeah. I was like, don't stop. I was like, if you stop, everyone's gonna know.
You guys pulled it off very well. I do not remember that goof at all.
Yeah, seemed like a very like professional set early on. Like, y'all had your shit together pretty early on.
Yeah.
We were not expecting to play shows that soon. Me and Matt had just started jamming together August of last year.
Okay.
So like I had released music by myself, but I didn't think that we were gonna play shows or anything.
Right.
Like I didn't think I was gonna go anywhere with it.
It's gonna be like a studio project.
Yeah, I just figured it's a studio project. It's like a bucket list thing. Like I got some songs, I just want to like get them out there, and just like it is what it is. And then we started getting show offered. Matt wanted to be involved. Then we started getting show offers, and eventually I was like, we should do something. I was like, should we? And he was like, yeah, we should do it. I was like, all right, well, like we're gonna have to figure out like a third member, whether you're playing drums or bass. Like I don't know, like we'll have to figure it out. But he's like, yeah, we got it, we'll figure it out. So it was a lot of stressing, a lot of like practice it long, like 4 or 5 hour practice sessions.
Yeah, putting the set together.
Because Matt lives down in the Springs too, so it is a drive for him to get up here to practice and play shows and stuff. So I'm glad like we just hammered down, and definitely wasn't our best performance, but it was cool. I'm glad it was where it was. I think I would have done substantially worse if it was like a bigger venue with like a lot more people.
Yeah,
I'm glad that it was like a more local chill venue where a lot of people are just kind of there to chill and hang out.
I've played,
but also listen to music. Yeah, they're not there like for the show.
Set.
They're usually just there to have a good time and listen to live music, regardless of what it is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I've played Chippers a number of times across a few different bands. Nothing against Chippers at all. I've never had a good show there. Like I've never had a show where I walked away from being like, that was really good. That was fun.
Yeah.
Same
Every
here.
time something's
Same
gone
here.
wrong.
Yeah.
And again, it's not Chipper's fault. It's just a weird
No.
thing with me not vibing with that venue.
It's
I
just
think.
the location thing too. Like it's just far enough away from everything else that you really have to convince people that they want to come out to those shows.
Yeah, you got to do some promotion for Chipper shows for sure.
Definitely.
I still think it's such a cool idea though. Like I love the fact that like you can go to a bowling alley in Fort Collins and you can have a bunch of beers, you can have a bunch of food, and you can also go mosh in a hardcore show.
It is a great
In the
aesthetic
same-
too.
yeah,
Seeing
it's
that
like-
floating stage above the lanes.
Yeah,
It's pretty funny.
You telling me I can have like 4 beers, a cheeseburger, and then I can go hop in a pit to like watching people drown or something like that.
And I can bowl a turkey.
and then I can bowl afterwards.
that was part of my problem with that show. I had way too much time to drink beers and bowl.
Yeah, that
and
show.
eat some pizza.
That show is interesting.
I was in no state to play by the time we hopped on stage.
We've talked about this a lot on the podcast, but I'll bring it up one more time. It's not to be just a shit talker, but someone who's experienced the pain of like those locally organized shows where the load in is like 6 hours before you're on the stage, and you don't even really get a sound check unless you're the headliner. So like that show for us, we were just fucking sitting around for such a long time. By the time we got on the stage, we were just like, fuck this, dude.
Yeah.
We bowled like 5 games and I had like 15 beers probably. So my arm was exhausted. I was pretty buzzed and
I was just
tired.
upset that I lost so many different rounds of bowling in a row.
Oh, I know. That was the other. I was so discouraged
Took
going
a
on
hit on my
stage because
psyche.
my bowling game that day was absolute dog shit.
Yeah, I think
too.
Will like whooped us both,
Well, yeah.
which I wouldn't have seen coming.
No, Will was
It's
a very
unfortunate.
calculated bowler. you wouldn't expect it. But
No, not at all.
Yeah.
That's how the second time we played Chippers, we closed out the night, and it was just like we just had so much time to like sit around and like talk about like the crowd and like see how it's going and like debate like how's the show gonna pan out and to drink and to like just screw around. And then I feel like it almost makes it worse because like you have so much like your nerves just build up. When it comes to like I don't know, when it comes to shows, typically I like to play like second or something like that, where it's like I have enough time to like scope out how the show is going and like whatever.
That's the best.
But
And you
still,
tend to have the best
you get
crowd
it,
then too.
then you get it out of the way, like
Yeah. Too long to stew and get into your own head is never
The people
good.
watching at the bowling alley is so good.
Yeah,
Like,
that's true.
When you headline, you get to watch everybody do their thing, but then everyone leaves. Like that's kind of the curse of the bowling alley is like 9:30, 10 o'clock. Everyone's dipping out. It doesn't really
Not many
matter.
people are bowling
Like,
past that hour.
yeah.
Well, it's impressive how much you guys have gotten done just in the years since we played the bowling alley show. Mainly putting out an album. And congrats on it, man. It's a great record.
Yeah, it
I
sounds
listened to it again
fucking
today.
awesome.
Yeah,
I appreciate it.
Really, really solid record.
Yeah.
Especially for your debut. And putting it out in a year of being
that was kind
a
of
formal
the
band.
Yeah, like I said, like the idea originally was just kind of like I'm gonna put out a couple singles and then I'm gonna put out an album by myself, and it's just gonna be a cool little thing that I'm doing on the side. And once Matt came on board, Matt started getting us on to a lot of hardcore shows with Lucked Out and stuff, and that's where I was like, okay, we're gonna take this a little more serious. But I still had this weird. I was like, oh, well, yeah, like I'll have an album out in the next, couple months. But like we ended up re-recording, like doing different mixes, like messing around a lot, making sure it was perfect. 'Cause I got like, once we started kind of like building up momentum a little bit, I was like, well, this can't be like mediocre.
Right.
This has to be at this point. This needs to be something that's like nice. So. I was expecting to have that album out way before, but I'm glad that it took the time that it did, because if I had rushed it, probably wouldn't have turned out as good as it did. And I'm really happy. I'm so picky with like the mixes and stuff, because I go to school for audio production.
Oh, nice.
So I kind of like I had a really tight vision for Homesick. I knew exactly how I wanted everything to sound, and so that was another like layer of build up for it. I was like, is this gonna like meet my expectations? Like,
for sure.
I don't want to be too picky. Like, I don't want to be a burden on like the mixing process, but at the same time, like, I know what I want. I want to make sure that it's good, so.
Yeah. I just realized how long we've been doing this. We still have no idea what we're doing. We never formally introduced you. Everyone, this is Alex Forbes, right? Last name Forbes?
Yeah.
Thank you. Of Summer of Peril. Their debut album's called Homesick. It's on all streaming platforms. Welcome him to the show.
Yes. Welcome.
There we go.
Thank you for being here.
Better late than never.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, dude, thanks for being here. We meant to have you on, like we talked about having you on closer to the album, and we're just horrible about scheduling.
Well, again,
like
I think whenever I hit you guys up, it was like either late 2023 or really early 2024, because I was expecting to have the album out by then. Mm-hmm. And like I said, we ended up taking our sweet time on it, so it kind of got lost in like, there's a lot of stuff that I wanted to do that didn't happen because the album didn't come out at that point. It came out much later. But I'm happy with how everything's going right now. Took a little bit of a break.
Yeah.
These past few months.
Yeah, because you guys hit the road for a while.
Yeah. We just got back from tour. A little 5-day, or it was like 6 days total, 5 shows.
Nice.
Texas, Midwest. It was really, really, really fun time. But we're going to start releasing music again here soon in January.
Yeah.
So,
very exciting.
Nice. You have some stuff. Are you like in the writing process right now, or is it?
We're actually, it's finished. All of it's being finished. All of it's finished in the writing area. We are recording our first single this Saturday, actually. Going down to Swadley Studios with the guys from Creek.
Yeah.
Awesome dudes, awesome band. So we'll record a single with them, and then probably, over the next year, release some more singles, some fun stuff, and then another big major release in the coming, year and a half. So
right on.
Very good.
Forward to it.
Yeah.
Very exciting.
That's what's up. How was you recorded the first album at Studio Nile?
Yeah, Studio Nile with Elliot and Marshall.
Okay.
Awesome experience. Really really professional mixes and stuff. Elliot definitely knows what he's doing. Like, he is.
Yeah.
I think Elliot and Marsh are like the 3rd or 4th producers I'd been through for Summer of Peril stuff. Mm-hmm. And they get it,
Yeah.
Like Elliot.
Yeah, the sound is very much there. You can tell whoever mixed it like has an appreciation for shoegaze and that sort of music.
That was a big that was a big deal to me, because like producers, like sometimes really you could have like some of the most talented audio engineers in the world, but if they don't really care for what you want, for the vision you want, if they don't really like, even if they see it, if it's not their thing and they don't have an appreciation for it, I feel like it's probably not going to come out as good as if someone, if you're in a hardcore band and you go to like a dude that produces indie pop, he's probably not going to care too much about, producing it. You might still have a good product, but I think it adds
just not the right context.
It adds some sparkle to it whenever you have a producer that actually has an appreciation for your genre. So
definitely,
Elliot's definitely a shoegaze guru. He's been producing for Overhang as well.
Okay, nice.
Another like awesome shoegaze band out of Fort Collins. So definitely know what they know what they're doing.
Hell yeah.
And it was nice having Marsh in there too, because Marsh he's less of a shoegaze guy, but he's more of like a hardcore metalcore dude. So he kind of brought in that like heavier aspect we are going for. Mm-hmm. So having both of them on board was a blessing. It was really, really nice. So.
Yeah. Because you were... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to ask, like, kind of as a sidebar question, like, did you always envision, like, the kind of heavier aspect of the songs being part of the whole mix, or was that like something that Matt brought with him to the group?
I've always wanted it to be a bit heavier. When I first started recording, I didn't really know exactly what kind of genre I wanted to do. I just knew I wanted it to be grungy and I wanted it to be a little heavy, but I still wanted it to be very palatable for most people. I think like one of the deciding moments of like where I wanted to take it was I saw Movements with Downward, and that was like the first big concert I saw in Colorado, in Denver. And just seeing the way like Pat moves the crowd, seeing like Downward, what they brought, like that was my first time ever hearing of them. And they're really popping off now, which is awesome to see. But I was just like, this is what I want to do. I was like, this is so sick. Like, because that was also one of the that was the first time I saw Movements too, and I've been listening to Movements for a long time, and just seeing like not only having an appreciation for like that alternative style of rock, but like also just seeing the way that they interact with the crowd was like, so it was really cool. And then I think seeing Downward, that was one of the first exclusively shoegaze bands I've ever seen, and they were a little less interactive with the crowd, but like, God, they were so good live. And I was just like, this is what I want to do with my music. Like, this is sick. So, but I've always been into heavy stuff growing up. Like I was a big metalcore, deathcore kid growing up. Nice. So,
are those the bands? Because you mentioned you hadn't performed live in a while. Is that like the bands you were playing in when you were performing before?
No. Actually, when I was a teenager, I played guitar in a youth group band for like, it wasn't a church, it was just like a youth group thing. I grew up in the Southeast. My folks were religious. My family's super religious, so I kind of got roped into it.
Yeah.
Whether I liked it or not, and but it was cool. It was,
still good exposure.
Yeah. It was still like, I had really bad social anxiety growing up, so it was a really good way to like kind of just like get it out, you know, as a teenager, as opposed to having to deal with that as an adult wanting to play music, so like, I think it was a nice, like, because as a kid, before I'd ever played, I was just like, oh my God, it was like such this big deal. And then finally I got in my head, I was like, it's a youth group, dude. Like, you're playing like the same 3 chords for every song, and no one really cares if you screw up. Like, So
everyone's just there for the vibe.
Yeah. Summer of Peril, believe it or not, is actually my very first band I've ever been a part of, ever done. So it's funny going from like in the last year and a half, like it was not really any like project set in stone, to now like me and Matt started Bangalore, which is like a hardcore project. We've been in the studio for that, so we'll be debuting that here soon.
Nice.
Alex McMahon from Lucked Out just started a deathcore project called Suicide Grip. That'll also be making its debut soon, and me and Matt are also playing in that as well. So like, sick. Now it's like I just have like a bunch of projects. I went from like
0 to 10.
I went from like 0 to like 5, like really fast. I love it though. There's nothing I'd rather do with my free time than play music. I'd if I had it my way, if I had enough free time, I'd probably be out there catching side projects like Pokemon, like every genre, like pop punk side project here, acoustic indie here, like deathcore here, like whatever. I don't know. It's all, I love it.
I think that's the cool thing about Summer of Peril, like from the outside looking in, is even though, it kind of tackles like grunge and like shoegaze more specifically, like you can see a bunch of different areas of influence like within that. So
like it's very obvious you guys would hop on a bunch of hardcore shows that doesn't seem weird at all.
I never expected that to happen, but when it became a trend, I was like, this is so cool. I was like, I love that we're in this weird spot where we're like, we're not a hardcore band by any means, but like we share the same crowd. And
tangentially
it's like it's like a Title Fight situation where, like Title Fight, they weren't, they were more post-hardcore starting out. But even when they were a shoegaze, even when they had a shoegaze album out, they were still playing hardcore shows, playing hardcore fests, just deeply embedded into the Pennsylvania hardcore scene. And like that's so like I love seeing bands like that's one of my favorite things, seeing non-hardcore bands that are just deeply embedded to the hardcore scene in the local area. It's really sick to see.
I think that it happens more with the hardcore scene than most other scenes.
Definitely.
Like jam bands stick with the jam scene. Like a lot of the like indie acoustic stuff kind of tends to stick in its own little circle, but the hardcore scene and like the metal scene is always like pulling from all these other interesting subgenres.
Well, the show that we played with Alistair Cowboy, that was such a cool show. I'd
good
like
example.
when Colin said that they wanted like a mixed bill, I was like, that is the sickest thing. I was like, I would have never expected you guys to hit us up for that, but that like I was like, yes, 100 times over. That's so fucking awesome.
Yeah, and we like gain a lot of cool exposure that we wouldn't necessarily otherwise.
That was a packed out basement show, and the fact that you had two gaze bands on a death metal show, EP release nonetheless, packed out, and like so cool to see like people having the same reactions. Well, obviously not like the same reaction, but people were having just as good of a time energy wise. People were still feeling it for Summer of Peril, and you guys, but then at the same time, like the same dudes are just going ham for Alistair Cowboy and Harvested. Like, it was such a cool thing to see. I didn't expect. I was a little nervous because I was like, these are all like death metal kids. These are all hardcore kids.
You never know what you're gonna get.
I don't know. Well, we normally get a lot of the hardcore kids that come to our shows and stuff, and a lot of the hardcore crowd. But that show was like more like the death metal crowd. And I was like, okay, the hardcore scene I'm used to. This is a little different. But it was so cool. It was one of the coolest shows we've ever played.
The Harvested set was just downright scary. Like, I feared for my life multiple times during that set.
I remember Matt, he was like, when I told him that Alistair Cowboy was doing their EP release show in that basement, he was like, that's going to be a scary show.
Bodies flying.
There was a lot of like sharp objects. Just like, metal poles everywhere.
I was just about to say, my girlfriend was standing on the wall, and there's a bunch of like nails like sticking out as like as like hooks. Well, I shouldn't say nails; they were like screws, but they were still sharp, like sticking out, pointy things sticking out of the wall. And like normally,
safety hazards.
Normally it's like whatever, but like you're in a basement, like a packed out basement show. People are moshing, people are like pitting hard as fuck, people are getting slammed into the walls and stuff. And so the entire time I'm like sitting there like, if I wasn't in the pit, I was like
patting her head,
making sure that she was like away from like her and Jake too, because I don't think Jake, our merch guy, he was there too having a good time, and I don't think he realized there were like screws right behind him. And I was like, yo, watch it. I was like pointing. I was like touching shoulder and pointing. I was like, be careful. Like there's screws and shit, nails right behind you. Be careful. I feel like someone did get slammed into a pole or some shit at that show.
Definitely, yeah.
I feel like there was like some notable falls where people were like, "Oh shit!" Get back up.
Was that a house show or was it?
It was a house show.
House show. Yeah.
It was Alistair's EP release.
I remember that show happening. I couldn't make it that night.
Yeah, I invited you, but you didn't come.
Oh, man.
I had something legitimate important to do.
I'm sure. Yeah.
That's what they all say.
Big old spank sesh.
That was my monthly spank sesh, dude.
He
Very tough to reschedule those.
One particular afternoon.
Yeah, it has to happen then.
I did kind of want to ask too, like, just not to go super out of order, but just as far as formation, like, how did you and Alex wind up together? Like, did you know each other before, or like, how did he know you were working on?
You mean me and Matt?
Or Matt? Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. So, funny enough, so I moved up here in 2022. 2023, I started going to school in audio production, which is how I found the local scene, because I knew there was local music. I mean, you're gonna have local music in every big city, especially college towns, but it's usually anything crazy. You might have a couple like really good bands here and there. But once I got into the audio production program at Front Range, everyone in that program plays in different jam bands, different projects, whatever. And so then I started going to a couple local shows here and there, and I saw, it's like June 9th, 2023, there was a really stacked hardcore bill at the County Line spot. And me and Jake were gonna go, and he couldn't make it because he's a single dad. He's doing single dad stuff, and I'd been cooped up in the apartment for like ages. I was like, I just need to get the fuck out of here. I need to do something. Like, and finally, I was just like, whatever. I'm just gonna go by myself. I need to get out of my apartment, go do something, go out and socialize, whatever. So I pull up to the county line spot, and this is the first house show I'd ever been to in Colorado. One of the first local shows, and it was Alistair Cowboy, Lucked Out, Wrong Choice, Ruckus, and who else? I feel like I'm missing someone.
Solid lineup.
Uppercut.
Oh,
yeah.
man.
So really, really cool lineup. It was really awesome. And so Jonah from Ruckus, Jonah in Boston, I met them off rep because they, were like directing me, like where to park my car and stuff. And then they just introduced me to everybody. And so I was like, this is so cool. I was like, I've never like met so many other musicians, and in a context like this where it's really chill. Everyone's kind of just chilling. There's no like green room, whatever. The bands are just hanging out, having beers with everybody else. And I saw Lucked Out play, and I was really impressed. I was like, this is fucking sick, dude. And then after the set, I caught Matt. I was talking to Matt for a second because I was like, dude, I really like your ink, man. I was like, where do you go? Like, I'm looking for new tattoo artists around the area. And he was like, oh, I got these in Europe. And he mentioned that he was military, and I was like, so we immediately hit off. I was like, no shit, like me too. I was like, and now you're out and you're just like playing hardcore shows. And he was like, yeah. And I was like, how does it feel to live my fucking dream? That's so sick. And so we briefly met, hit it off. We didn't really talk very much after that, but it was just like a cool interaction. I was like, that's so cool to meet like another Army vet that's also a musician. And the next month, July of that year, I released Summer 08, the demo of Summer 08. And like a couple weeks afterwards, he hit me up and he was like, dude, I didn't realize that you also played, like that you had a project going on right now. This is really sick. Do you need anyone? Do you need any help? Like, are you looking for band members and stuff? And I was like, as a matter of fact, it's just me. I was like, I don't have a band. Summer of Peril is a solo project right now. And he was like, dude, like, whatever you need, like if you need a drummer, if you need a bassist. I was like, well, I mean, you're welcome to
both.
I was like, man, you can do whatever you want. I was like, this is a clean slate. I was like, I'm just recording stuff in a studio, getting homies to fill in on different. I think I played bass for a couple songs. The guy that was producing the demos, he played drums on them. So I was like, dude, clean slate. Like you can do whatever you want. I'm just happy to have someone on board that shares the vision for what I wanted and stuff. And so that's when he came on board. So it was like a stars align kind of moment because it was really out of nowhere. And then all of a sudden it was like, well, really June 9th was like the stars align moment because like I'd literally met like half of the Fort Collins scene. In one
they were
night.
all
like,
there.
Yeah, I met like dudes from Ruckus, dudes from King Crawdad, Bitch Flower, like, so many different bands that it was, because how the Fort Collins scene, everyone's homies, everyone hangs out, same shows and stuff. Everyone knows
like
each other.
4 different bands.
Yeah,
too.
everyone's in like 6 different bands.
Yeah.
So like, it was really sick meeting everybody, and that was kind of like the stars align moment. Because after that night, I'd met Matt who wanted to join in. I'd also met a lot of people who also play shows and were able to be like, oh, like you should play here, like oh, you're playing shows now. Do you want to hop on this bill, whatever. So it was just such a cool moment. But yeah, that's how I met Matt. It was really cool. And yeah, now at this point, like Matt's like my older brother. At this point, like we come from such similar backgrounds, and we have the same music tastes and stuff. It's funny. He's been getting me more into like old school hardcore that I was never into before. Because like I said, I grew up like metalcore, deathcore kid. And I'm kind of getting him into all these like niche shoegaze bands that are popping off now. So we kind of like share very similar music tastes and put each other on new music constantly. It's really cool.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
That's funny. You guys are both Army.
Yeah.
Did you serve at the same time, same years, or
no?
Okay.
Oh, well, yeah. We both recently got out within the last 3-4 years. But we never. It was purely like,
Yeah, you didn't meet each other.
We had never heard each other or met each other until that show, and it was just purely like tattoos. Yeah, he's completely. I'm pretty covered, but he's even way more covered than I
remember
am.
that from meeting him at the show. Yeah,
yeah, like he was playing without a shirt on, and he's just like totally yadded out, and I was like, he knows what's up.
He knows what's good.
He knows what's up. He knows where the good artists are, and I was like,
Where were you based when you were in the Army?
I spent the majority of my time in Texas at Fort. It's now called Fort Cavazos. It was called Fort Hood. They just changed all the names.
Yeah, Fort Hood.
Yeah, one of the worst trash places to get stationed in the military. It's so god awful. Like, that was part of the reason why I got out. I was just like, I am so sick of this shit, dude. Get me the fuck away from me. I want nothing to do with this.
Did you meet like kind of like-minded people in the Army, or was it hard to find dudes with your interests?
Yeah, even going in, there was such a conflict. I was like, is this what I want to do? Like, like I'm not really, I was never the military type of guy. I was just like, I've always been from an artistic background.
Mm-hmm.
And so I contemplated not joining for the longest time after I'd already started the process. But and even being in it was so weird because I almost never met musicians in the Army. I think there was one other guy that I knew that was pretty cool. We had similar music taste, and he also played guitar and stuff. And we actually never, I don't think we even met each other. We were in the same battalion, so he was, we worked around each other a lot, and we never actually talked until we probably briefly met at some point while we were both at Fort Hood. But once I got out and I was posting about, starting Summer of Peril and like releasing music, he started hitting me up. He was like, dude, I wish we'd have like started talking. He's like, this is sick. Like,
yeah.
Like, I remember you from back at Fort Hood and stuff, like, it's so cool that, like, you're pursuing music now. Like, I wish we had hung out sooner. I was in the barracks, like, not too far away from you.
Yeah.
And I was like, damn, that kind of sucks. I wish I had, like, met guys like this sooner. I do remember there was one night before I left Fort Hood, there was one night I heard drums and guitar, and it, like, wasn't coming from a speaker. And I was like, what the fuck is that? And I went outside. There was kind of like a catwalk, like a Motel 6 kind of situation. That is the way our barracks were. Like, so I walk out of my room, there's like the catwalk kind of thing. And I go down the building, and I see in the barracks next to us, these dudes are just jamming in like the yard outside of the barracks, like full drum set, full, like, they got amps, cabs, like full rigs, like everything going. Like, no one was doing vocals because they didn't have a PA system, but like they were just jamming. And I just sat there with a beer and just like sat there and listened for like 30 minutes before they I think the MPs got called. They would go shut it down.
Did they just sneak that shit in there? Or?
I mean, it's
What were they up to?
It's not like.
It's not like
it's not locked down. It's not like not allowed.
Oh, okay.
It's just like, you got to be careful. Like, I never played electric guitar in the barracks because, like, they're so small and like, someone's going to get pissed at some point. So I would just kind of pick around on acoustic whenever I was in the barracks. But yeah, that was so sick. And I was like, I wish these dudes were like in my unit or something so I could, like hang out and, but yeah, that was like the only time. I'd never really met fellow musicians in the Army. It was such a weird thing, like going from that and getting out and now having so many friends in the scene that are musicians, and even like I've met a lot of people now that are also veterans out here that play in bands.
Yeah.
So,
how long were you in for?
4 years total. Yeah.
4. Nice.
Yeah, I just kind of did my 4 and got out. I was never, like I said, I was never like all like join the Army, and I was kind of like, I didn't know what I wanted to do in high school, so I was like, well, I want to get the fuck out of my hometown. That's what I want to do.
It's a good way to do it.
Yeah. Me and our merch guy Jake, we went to high school together. We were on the same page. We were like, yeah, let's just get out of here and do something with our lives. I don't want to go to school, and I don't want to work construction or some like food service job for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
So, and we knew that if we didn't get things rolling at that point, we probably just would have, roots kicked in,
fallen
and
into
just stay in your hometown and stuff. So, we joined together, both did our our time and just left. Like that was kind of the idea. It's like, I'm gonna suffer for a few years, but then like things are gonna be easier because, regardless of what people say about the military, there's a lot of outlets for like, once you do your time and as long as you're not in trouble and stuff, they give you so many opportunities to like have a smooth transition to a good job. And,
sure.
a lot of times that comes with like, affordable health care, being a veteran, stuff like that, education benefits and whatnot. So I was like, okay, like I'm gonna suffer for a few years, and then like if I want to go to school, it'll be free. And if I want to go to a trade job, like they'll pay for my certifications. I can go into whatever field I want to do, and then it'll be fine. So like it's worth it in the end. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm glad I did it, but I'm also glad I'm out.
Yeah, kudos, man. My dad was Army, and he always tried to encourage me to join. I do not share the honor of having served, but did great things for him too. And he probably would have done it anyways. He partly joined because he is Canadian, so he needed to get his citizenship.
That's cool.
But
that's cool.
Yeah,
my dad's family is also from Canada.
Oh, nice.
That's funny.
Whereabouts in Canada?
Nova Scotia.
Nova Scotia. Okay,
Yeah.
He's Ontario. Hamilton, Ontario.
Yeah. My dad grew up in Maine, and then I think it was like his granddad or his dad that immigrated from Nova Scotia. And they kind of just like hopped over the border into Maine. So
we can get Canadian citizenship.
I've looked into that before. I've considered it, heavily considered it.
I had it as a kid somehow, and then I think once you turn 18 and become not a minor anymore, you just need to reapply.
It's cool.
Yeah,
it's really tight. Is there like a limit on like? Because I know like I think there's a European country. I think it's like Ireland or something where if you have a close enough background to Ireland, you can like.
Right.
You can get citizenship fairly easily. But like I've Irish descent in my family, but it's not anywhere like close enough to like be able to just like hop over there and like it's not like my granddad or like my parents are from Ireland or anything.
Right.
Like
No,
that.
I think Canada's pretty desperate for people.
That's cool.
So as strict as they are about letting people from the US in, like if you have a felony or anything, you're not getting into Canada. But yeah, I think if you have some lineage.
Yeah, that's cool.
It's like an Alaska situation. They'll give you land and a goat.
Nice.
I'm heavily one of these days. I'm heavily considering just driving straight north to Calgary. It's like good like 12 hours north of us. Because I don't know. I want to go to Canada. I want to visit either like Nova Scotia or like the Canadian Rockies or like British Columbia.
Yeah,
like, that'd be so sick.
It'd be so sick.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Awesome.
Ontario has a lot of great parts, but most of it is just northern Michigan.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
Yeah, but like if you go to the Great Lakes areas, there's a lot of pretty little Great Lakes towns. So yeah, I spend a lot of time in Canada, in Ontario specifically. We'd go like out every summer.
That's sick.
Yeah, good place.
I've been up to Maine to visit like my dad's family out there, but I think that's the furthest north I've really like visited, vacationed. We stopped when I was in the military. We stopped in Alaska, but it was like
Oh, that's cool.
we were stuck in the airport for like 4 hours, and then we took back off.
Yeah. Did you get to go overseas at all in the Army?
I went to Korea. I was in Korea for South Korea for 9 months. My unit just did like a rotation out there. It's one of the more like vacation-esque rotations.
Yeah.
We just trained a lot with South Korean engineers and South Korean military, and did our training, whatever. We were just kind of there, and then at the end of the 9 months, we just came back, and it was whatever. But it was cool. It was like a cool vacation. We still had a lot of downtime. The unit that I was in. Units like that mostly just go to like South Korea, Kuwait, and Eastern Europe. So not a lot of like combat deployments, but even from what I've heard, like going to Eastern Europe is like they're kind of under lockdown over there. Like they don't have a lot of free time. It's like there's so much stuff going on with NATO that like they're just training nonstop.
Right.
And they like might get like they might be allowed to leave and go into like the city or whatever. Maybe once or twice a month or something like that, because their schedule is just so. It's not even that they're like under lockdown per se. It's just that their schedule is so busy, so packed.
For it. Mm-hmm.
Whereas Korea, for the most part, there were times where like we would be working for like a month straight, but for the most part, we still had like the weekends off. We could still hop on a train, go down to Seoul, spend a weekend in Seoul and then come back up before we had to go back to work. So got to travel, got to see a lot of cool stuff, got to meet a lot of interesting people. It's very like Seoul's a very like international city. There's like a lot of people from everywhere.
That's what I would love to visit.
Yeah, there's a lot of like,
it seems so rad.
A lot of major universities. So like we were meeting people from like Germany, people from Russia, people from China, people from like Brazil, like Canada, like just everywhere in the world. You'd meet people. You'd be like, I don't know, you'd be talking about home or whatever, and some random guy would be like, oh yeah, I'm also from the U.S. I'm also from Texas or Colorado or the Southeast or whatever. And you're like, what the fuck are you doing here? They're like, oh, I'm an exchange student. I'm just like, what? Like, it's so crazy. It's so weird. But
it is. It's very unexpected and surreal when you're like traveling overseas to meet someone from home. I remember I was in a very remote island or not very remote, but pretty remote island in Mexico, and walked by a guy who had a CSU hat on.
Whoa.
I was like, whoa, dude.
That's nuts.
I went to school there.
The amount of times I've met people from North Carolina out here is like outrageous. It's so weird. Like you'll get to talking to somebody and they'll be like, oh yeah, I'm actually just like, I'm on vacation. I live in Charlotte. I live in this small town outside of Charlotte, and you're like,
yeah.
I'm like, what town? And they're like, they name my hometown. And I'm like, really? We're literally from the same place. It's insane. It's so weird.
It's a small world.
Yeah.
Well, we're very excited to have you on the podcast to talk about Summer of Peril, but also I think to talk about shoegaze in general. Because I think Julian and I are both large shoegaze fans. I certainly listen to a lot of shoegaze. I will admit I'm pretty stuck in the previous century when it comes to shoegaze, but we've never talked about it on the pod, so this seemed like a perfect opportunity. So when did shoegaze enter the picture for you? Not to interrupt you, were just about to say something too.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, speaking of like international cities and stuff, like you also meet people from like all kinds of like music backgrounds as well. So it's cool to see that like music isn't that much different. There's also like shoegaze and alternative rock popping off in like the UK and Europe and Asia and stuff. It's really tight, and that's like something I got to like. It was like a cool conclusion I got to come to while I was overseas. Was like how similar music taste can be across across the globe, which is really tight.
Yeah, Julian was just in Japan and came back with a bunch of cool music.
Yeah, there's a lot of like interesting like crossover that I wasn't necessarily expecting, but also just a whole world of Japanese pop that I did not know anything about. But Tokyo was honestly kind of similar to how South Korea sounds, where it's just like you're walking down the middle of the street and you bump into some random Americans who are from like 250 miles away from you, and it's like, damn, like we're both just here at the same time. Like, that's nuts. But also, just a bunch of Europeans, like everywhere, like Germans, French people. Just a lot of different cultures kind of all mixed up in together at Tokyo, which I thought was really interesting. Like, I've been to Mexico, and Mexico's cool, but it's just like a lot of Mexicans, a lot of Americans, not too terribly much else. So,
we just had an article written on us by a music blog out of Mexico City.
That was tight.
And that was like really unexpected, but it was super, super cool to see. And I was just like, it's so sick that like there's like a shoegaze alternative rock scene down there enough for them to be writing articles on like a local band.
They
from
love
Fort Collins.
Love their shoegaze and alternative in Mexico.
Yeah, it's really sick.
Like the bands that do well in Mexico are always super rad.
Have you guys ever heard of Black Market Playlists? I think. It's this guy, I don't know where he's from, but he is like a shoegaze connoisseur, and he is like a blessing to worldwide music. I wish I could like meet the dude and like shake his hand. He puts together playlists for like specifically for like punk and shoegaze flavors of alternative rock. And he literally like every month he puts out like numerous playlists of just like new shoegaze from the UK, new shoegaze from Germany, new shoegaze from the Midwest US, like new shoegaze from the West Coast of the United States, like
that's
new
rad.
Shoegaze from Mexico. And it's
Black
like,
Market Playlist, you said?
Yeah.
Spotify thing? Or? Okay.
Yes, mostly on Spotify. They've put us on a lot of their playlists, so shout out Black Market Playlist.
That's dope.
Check them out.
Yeah, I especially like appreciate the worldwide aspect of it.
Yeah.
Sharing shoegaze from different continents is so sick.
It being specific to shoegaze, I feel like it's pretty huge too, because most people that do like those like international playlists, they're combining like a bunch of different genres, and you kind of lose people relatively quickly.
Yeah, you'll go. I know exactly what you're talking about. You'll go from like shoegaze to like metalcore really fast.
Yeah,
or you'll go from like shoegaze to like indie pop. Really fast. And you're like, okay, there's a little bit of a deviation in here. You know, this is cool, but there's a little bit of a deviation in like you know, genre wise and stuff. But back to what you were saying. Like I've always obviously like shoegaze was a not. It's more of like I think it's safe to say it's more of like a niche subgenre in the '90s. Like '80s, '90s, not really a super popular thing. So growing up in the early 2000s, I never really was exposed to like shoegaze, but I feel like early 2000s alternative rock still had a lot of shoegaze elements. They just didn't label themselves shoegaze. It was like, oh, we're like post-hardcore or whatever. And then as shoegaze started to like make a revival in like, you know, the mid 2010s, I guess, 2016, I was like really digging some of these alternative rock bands. Notably like Title Fight with Hyperview. Yeah. Like I didn't know what shoegaze was at that point, but I was like, I definitely like that was a sound that I was familiar with and I really liked and I really enjoyed, especially like Title Fight. It's like even like Floral Green has some gaze aspects to it, not enough to call it, you know, shoegaze, but still some gazy aspects to it. And then Hyperview is like totally shoegaze album. But then as like the revival got like really big, I started to like, oh, okay, so like this is like this is its own thing. I was like, this is so sick. And like out of all of the different flavors and subgenres of alternative rock, I think shoegaze has probably been one of like the biggest, closest to home hitting like genres for me personally, as far as like what I really like in music and specifically alternative rock. I will say I've always been more into like the heavier shoegaze rather than like the dream pop, you know, like
the more lush stuff. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Probably mostly because I like Title Fight and stuff. Yeah. But Narrowhead's another big one. Like they go back to like 2013, 2014. I think even they've said that they weren't really shooting for like a shoegaze sound, but as they kind of grew and evolved, it was like this really cool mix of like post-hardcore and grunge with heavy shoegaze, and it's like one of the coolest things to see to me. Yeah,
for sure. Like I was really into music and would have considered myself a music head for a long time before I like really put a thumb on what shoegaze was. Like the fact that I liked a lot of shoegaze bands, and I think it was the band I was in high school, Savage Cabbage. I think someone compared us to shoegaze one time. I was like, which we definitely weren't, but I was like, I don't really know what that means even. And then so I like went back on it, and I got into a lot of shoegaze, interestingly enough, from being like a Britpop fan.
Weird.
And the tangential connections to shoegaze. Yeah. So like bands like Ride, bands like Lush.
Yeah.
And like Ride Still Today is one of my favorite bands of all time. Like the Nowhere album is up there. So yeah, but like I was pretty late into like being a fan of alternative rock before I like really figured out what shoegaze was and put a thumb on it. And,
I think a funny one is like I heard My Bloody Valentine a lot growing up.
Right.
But I was never like, oh, this is shoegaze. I was just like, oh, this is so cool. It's like, you know, like you got like these dreamy vocals, but like you still got these like cool like distorted riffs and guitar and stuff and all these like effects and whatnot. And but I never put a thumb out. I was like, oh, well, they're a shoegaze band. You know, that's how shoegaze typically sounds. So, that's sick. I think for me, it was more like the intertwining of post-hardcore with shoegaze was what really put the nail in the coffin for me. Because like I said, like I grew up on a lot of heavy stuff. So seeing like this really odd but like cool mixture of just like heavy riffs and like heavy guitars, like low tune, because I mean some shoegaze bands are out here like playing like drop C sharp, C standard, like, you know, like D standard, pretty low tunings and stuff, like pretty heavy riffs that you would hear in like post-hardcore or even like metalcore. But then you have like these really soft, dreamy vocals, like, and it's such a cool contrast.
Yeah,
and it's so like unique, like. I love Turnover. I love Peripheral Vision, but that flavor of shoegaze is like way more interesting to me than like the dream pop. Flavor of shoegaze.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's like why I'm stuck in the last century, is because a lot of the early bands that I got into were like the 90s shoegaze bands. And I as much as I love like the heavier shoegaze, like I love Title Fight.
Yeah.
All those bands you mentioned. I'm a little more on the other side where I like the real like lush, melodic, dreamy shoegaze. That's what I tend to gravitate towards. And it's I'm sure there are bands, a lot of great bands doing that today, but I like just haven't branched out enough to find those bands, like the more recent bands doing that. So tend to return back to my beloved 90s albums a lot.
I think Turnover is a good example of that too, because like Peripheral Vision, I feel like a lot of people didn't really. Of course, shoegaze people were like, "This is sick," because this is like heavily like a dream pop, shoegaze thing. But I would hear it a lot, and I really liked it. But I never put a thumb on it. I was like, "Oh, this is like dream pop, like very shoegazy." I never thought that. I was like, "Oh, this is just like really cool indie. This is really sick.
Right,
this is awesome."
Right.
Yeah, there's such a. I feel like the revival's not going anywhere. It's just getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah, and like what you said earlier about Summer of Peril being palatable for people, like totally agree. Like it's your songwriting is great. You have a real gift for like writing very interesting chord structures.
Thanks.
Yeah,
thanks.
Real gift for putting chords together.
I never. I was really bad at playing and singing growing up, and. On top of that, I never even really played electric guitar growing up. I played a lot of acoustic guitar. I'd kind of pick out a lot of folky stuff. And then once I was out of the barracks, I think my brother had moved into a new place, and he didn't have room for his guitar stuff. And he also like a big acoustic guy, very much. He put me on to a lot of the music that I grew up on, but he's also very much into like folk music, like old school country and stuff. So he was like, "Hey, like I don't have room. I never play this shit anyway. Like here's like a few pedals." And a little combo amp, just I know you still have your electric guitar, so you can just take it, like whatever. I was like, oh, cool, awesome, thank you. And then once I moved out here, I was like, oh, well, like I don't have an excuse anymore. I have the time, I have the space, I can be a little louder than like I could have been in the barracks, and that's when I started like really messing around, like putting like the same same kind of techniques I would do on acoustic or whatever, and kind of apply it to electric guitar. And it took a really long time for me to start. I had so many songs written, like lyrically, but no guitar riffs to them. I was really bad at writing guitar
Did you have
riffs.
like melodies for the lyrics too? Or?
Yeah, okay, yeah. A lot of times I would like I would sit on lyrics for a long time until I would like figure out a melody or something. And then I would end up writing guitar riffs to that melody and to the lyrics. And that's when I kind of figured out, because like I had this like big thing in my head that like, oh, it's got to be good, it's got to be like intricate, whatever.
Yeah.
And once I started putting chords to lyrics, finally it kind of dawned on me. I was like, it doesn't have to be anything crazy, especially with rhythm guitar. Like it can just be power chords that follow the melody. But if you do it right, it sounds good. And then you can get crazy with lead guitar to make it interesting,
Right.
Or you can just make it super heavy and just like have really heavy chunky riffs.
Yeah.
And it's still sick, so yeah, I appreciate that. That's cool. Like the songwriting it's been weird for me, but I feel like I'm growing a lot in songwriting and like writing guitar riffs and stuff. Writing top down is really weird. I didn't realize how weird it is to write top down.
Yeah, it surprised me.
Yeah, until I
very backwards from how we write songs.
That's pretty backwards for everybody. Until I started actually like chatting with like musicians who write and stuff, hearing how they did, I was like, oh, so like I'm the weird one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Freak,
cool, I guess. But then it kind of, I was like, well, maybe I should try to start writing the regular way. Yeah. So a lot of the stuff we're writing now has been a little more traditional, but I feel like the new stuff we've written is a lot better. So feel like it's more interesting. So
yeah. No, I like the all the songs that are on Homesick are very interesting. I like listening again today really was like focusing on the chord progressions you're going through, and like there's a lot of moments where I was like, oh, that's such an interesting chord to go to, but really dig it. And it's like I don't mean this in a bad way at all, like not in a boring way. It's like very nice conventional songwriting and like a really interesting shoegaze filter. And like I said, it's just like really strong songwriting.
That's a good way to put it, honestly, because like that was like the Homesick was really a collection of old songs that I wanted to do something with, and they're the first songs that I ever like. Well, I shouldn't say the first songs. The first good, the first decent songs that have chords to lyrics. Yeah. And a couple of them I rewrote entirely, but like Streetlights and Changes goes all the way back to like 20. I think I wrote those in like 2021. Changes was originally very folky because I wrote it on like a parlor acoustic guitar in the barracks. Yeah, nice. And I didn't really like it. I didn't feel like it really suited me and the style I was going for. So I kind of like I rewrote the chord structure and stuff to make it more interesting, more of like an alternative rock vibe. But yeah, that's a good way to put like the chord progressions. They're really simple, but I feel like that's the thing that a lot of people don't understand is like you don't have to get crazy with guitar when you're in the context of a full band. And you're singing and stuff. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. You can have a simple chord progression and then a really interesting lead guitar and a really interesting bass line and nice big heavy drums and interesting lyrics and stuff. And especially when you do that through the lens of shoegaze, you can still come out with some like really interesting stuff. So
it's like Noel Gallagher said, Julian's gonna hate this, if you can't play it on an acoustic guitar, it's not a good song.
That's really funny. I write everything for Summer of Peril on an acoustic guitar. Because it always comes out.
Get that feeling.
It all comes out to me just jamming on acoustic in my apartment. Then I'm like, oh, I really like that, and I'm like, that might work with some lyrics I've been sitting on or whatever. Or I might like think of a melody and then write lyrics pretty quick on top of it. And then I just go to the electric guitar in the other room and try it on there and fuck with pedals and stuff. Yeah, till I like it. But yeah, I feel like Podcadzo is really, you guys bring a much different like flavor of shoegaze. It's
nice.
I remember when we played our first show with you guys, I remember telling Matt, I was like, do you know who Bay Faction is? I was like, they remind me of Bay Faction almost. They remind me of like
do you know Bay Faction?
I don't think so.
They were really, really popular like 2013, 2015, 2016, whatever, and they kind of dropped off. They removed a lot of their music off of platforms, and they just recently made a comeback, and they are awesome. Oh my god, you guys would like. I feel like you guys would probably like.
Oh yeah,
right.
Because it's very
adding them right now.
Yeah, it's very like indie, very a little poppy. I think their newer stuff is a little poppy. But upon hearing, I feel like there was another band that I was like, they sound like Bay Faction mixed with something else, but I can't remember. It's been so long. But yeah, I remember seeing you guys, and I was like, they give me Bay Faction vibes.
That's dope. I'm excited to listen to them.
Hell yeah.
We, Julie and I were in a band before Podcadzo that was pretty much me trying to rip off Vampire Weekend as much as possible. Very nice. Like preppy indie rock sort of.
I remember listening to Vampire Weekend when I was a teenager.
Yeah,
I haven't heard that name in so long.
They're a big band.
They got
for both
worse.
Of us.
They were definitely on my indie playlist as a teenager for sure.
Yeah, they loomed large, and then that band kind of imploded, and
they had a pretty steep downhill.
Yeah. But yeah, the band Julie and I weren't together kind of imploded, and then Podcadzo was born out of that with like cool. More of a just rock influence.
That's cool.
So it's kind of where we started, and a little bit similar to you. Like we just started, like the first EP we put out was just the two of us in the basement messing around, and then a band was kind of formed around that.
That's cool.
So yeah,
I think it's cool. Also, just like how. And I was going to ask this, but you kind of already alluded to it. Like the songs on the first record are like mostly just songs that you already had kicking around.
Yeah.
Given that, like I was super impressed with how like cohesive the record is, like start to finish. It's like super like within its own little universe, which not a lot of bands can like narrow in on that on their first release. So I just felt like that was a super, like, again, mature thing for like a band to do, have that cohesiveness. Did you like pick the songs to go on the record it because of any specific reasons, like to go with that, or was it just
I feel like once there was a couple songs that I didn't include on the record. One we did record and it was finished and stuff, but for one, the production, it was like the same kind of quality as like our demos, but it gave off a very like pop punk feel, even though the lyrics was still like thematically, like it kind of fit the theme of Homesick, but it was just very bouncy, very like pop punky. So I cut that one. There was another couple songs that I just probably another 3 or 4 songs actually that I just could not figure out guitar for the life of me. So I was just like, we have enough. I'm just gonna leave it. You know, like I feel like we're good where we're at. We don't need to stress about it anymore. But I'm a really big fan of bands and artists that put out records that are almost like a story. That is one of my favorite, like, I don't like critique people based off of that or anything like that, but when I do see it, I'm like, that is so fucking cool. I love that. Like, a weird, like, very out of genre example is Tyler, the Creator. I've always been a big Odd Future fan ever since I was like 13, 14. And Tyler, the Creator's albums are very much like stories. And he even has like these snippets of dialogue before and after songs that like tie everything together. And it's so cool to see stuff like that. And that was kind of originally with Homesick, we were going to have like, I had this idea where like on the demo for Changes, there's like a voicemail outro. And we were going to have like a couple different voicemail outros and then a couple random samples from movies and stuff. And it was going to kind of tie it in together more. But as we were listening to the album all the way through, with the masters and stuff, I was like, you know what? I was like, it doesn't need it. I was like, I think it's fine. I feel like, I feel like we're just going to be wasted. Cause we were on a really tight time hack at that point. I was like, we don't have the time and it just doesn't need it. You know, I was like, I feel like it's good. It's good where it's at. I don't want to waste time, delaying putting it out any longer just to add in weird, you know, dialogue that doesn't really, it's just like a little extra thing, you know. It would have been cool, but I'm glad we didn't do it.
I like the idea too of like a debut LP being just a straightforward like statement of work sort of, and then like in later releases you add in those bleeps and bloops.
And that's kind of the conclusion I came to. I was like, because we were also talking about like featuring some of our buddies and other bands and stuff, and then Matt made a good point. And he was like, no, it should just be us. He was like, it should just be. He was like, let's do it on another EP or record, but like this album, like it's just us.
Yeah, that's what we're about. Yeah.
And Matt was like, you want to do an LP off the bat? And I was like, yeah, I don't care. I was like, I don't, nothing against other bands that do it, but I was like, I don't really like the idea of EPs. Like, if you have enough, then like, why? You know? And that's like my thought process at least. So I was like, I have not only these songs that are finished, but I have like another, you know, EP's worth of lyrics and chords that I'm messing around with. I was like, if we can put out, I was like, I feel like it's really cool to just come out of the bat with an album. And
especially after only gigging for like a year, it's like super respectable. Like you see most bands, and it's just because local bands work on such a small scale, but most bands take like years to release anything.
Or just don't have the ambition to go for it.
Totally.
Yeah. Well, another thing, like you guys have worked together for a while in different projects and stuff. Whereas like I was like, you know, once we started playing shows, I was like, well, if this is going to be a thing, then it's going to be a thing. I'm not going to, you know, tread lightly. Yeah. Like I have a plan. I have a vision. Like I just want to execute. I want to make it happen before I start getting like all these other ideas that I start working on too. Sure. So I'm just like, I will trail off so quick if I am in the right environment to do so.
Yeah,
sure.
So if I have enough ideas, I will completely abandon whatever I'm doing to go fucking do something.
Especially
Pursue
when the door is like already open. Like once you already have some creative project going, then it's just like, well, fuck, I want to do something completely different.
Right.
Like, yeah.
It was almost like a really nervous thing. I was like, I want to get this out before, like, because I knew I wanted to do other stuff musically too, not just Summer of Peril. So I was like, I want to get this out of the way before I go start anything else. And I just want to do it right, and I want to do it all the way through, and I just want to, like, you know, release a solid album. And even if that's the only thing that we do with Summer of Peril, so be it. But obviously not the case now. But yeah, I was just like, you know, like you said, you got to do it while it's fresh.
Yeah,
you know?
totally.
And I also really like, I love when albums have intros and interludes and outros. I love that. I think it's so cool.
Well, the phone call outro, like voicemail outro you have on the album's a very nice touch.
Yeah,
I like that a lot.
I was messing around with that riff. I was actually trying to learn. I think it was because you mentioned Vampire Weekend, another one of those like indie weird like lo-fi or like indie bands that were big back in that time. Dandelion Hands. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
Uh-huh.
I was trying to learn a Dandelion Hands riff. It was like one of their instrumental songs, and I couldn't quite.
Dandelion Hands in forever.
I know. I still listen to them every now and then. They're definitely on the sad playlist for sure. For sure. But I was trying to learn this little like picking because I was like messing around. I was like, oh, that sounds like that one song by Dandelion Hands, and I was like trying to mess around with it, and it wasn't quite right, but it still sounded really cool. And I was like started messing around with that, and I was playing it for some of my friends, and they were like, that's really cool. I really like that, and then I ended up using it for a project and my audio production classes. And I was like, yeah, fuck it, I'll throw it on. I was like, this would make a really cool outro. I'm big on poetry too. So like I really like the idea of having like a spoken word poem. Like Movements does that. Pat from Movements does that a lot. He'll kind of like break out and like slam poetry. Not slam poetry. He'll kind of like break out in like spoken word.
Just like stream of consciousness.
And I don't think I'm a big fan of that as much as I used to be. But I did really like the ideas of like just kind of like a nonchalant, like as like an intro only or an outro only or an interlude or something, just having like a spoken word on top of like a cool guitar riff. I was like, that'd be sick. And so I still think I probably could have done it better if I had spent more time on it, but I mixed that one myself, just the guitar and like messing around with like the rain sounds and stuff in the background. Nice. Like I said, for an audio production project in school. And then I was like, I was asking Marsh and Matt, I was like, do you guys should we put this on? It was just like a little outro. And they were like, fuck yeah.
Yeah.
Like, okay,
nice.
cool.
Yeah.
Like, cool.
Very nice touch. Yeah.
It's like a very the vibe of the record is like super like Fort Collins-y. Maybe that's
Really?
just because I like live here, but I don't know why. It's just like such a Fort Collins-y record to me.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I don't. Yeah. There's a now that like I've been here for a while, there's a lot of other bands that are coming out, and not that we're like super close in sound and genre, but there is like a certain level of like Fort Collins band.
It's just like not even like the performance necessarily or the production. It's just like the vibe that the record gives off. It's
really?
like when I listen to it, it's like I can see myself like walking down Elizabeth Street at like 2
Driving around
a.m.
town.
like as a 20-year-old kid. Like it just puts me in such a weird like Fort Collins nostalgia.
That's
vibe.
right. That is the first time I've ever heard that. But that's really cool though. That's tight.
Especially because you're not even from here.
Yeah.
You've been here that long. You captured the vibe perfectly, like on your first try.
It takes an outsider to do it.
Yeah, sure it does.
Well, Alex, man, thanks so much for coming on the pod.
Yeah.
Let's wrap this up with, it can be top 3 shoegaze albums of all time, top 3 shoegaze artists, recommendations, whatever you want it to be. But what's your top 3?
Oh man.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
God, dude.
You have 30 seconds.
I asked the top 3 because I feel like this is something that comes up a lot with shoegaze. Or like I've seen like fun debates on the internet of like the holy trinity of like shoegaze before, and like people always like, no, these are the best 3 or like the most important shoegaze albums that set the tone.
I have been really, really big on newer music lately. So I guess instead of going with like, you know, older albums that a lot of people would say, Top 3 would be in no particular order. Hyperview by Title Fight. We're Not Here to Be Loved by Fleshwater. I'm a ridiculously huge Fleshwater fan.
I have to check
and then a new brand new album that just came out that I'm a really, really big fan of so far is Chameleon by Trauma Ray.
Okay, nice. Sweet.
Actually, I'll add another one.
Yeah,
just because Chameleon is so fresh. It is literally like they just released it like within the last couple months. Satisfaction by Narrowhead.
Okay,
nice.
One of my favorites. Narrowhead. All 3 of their albums are perfect in my expertise.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. So Chameleon, Hyperview, We're Not Here to Be Loved. That's a little more like, that's kind of venturing off into more like new gaze, heavier stuff. But then Satisfaction. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
So
educate yourselves, people. Listen to those albums.
Yes.
And check all those out.
Yeah.
Thanks, man. You're welcome back
Thank you guys for having
anytime.
me on.
We
Appreciate
can
it.
have the whole band on sometime too. That'd be fun.
Yes, that'd be awesome. We can get coordinated.
Yes.
That's the hardest
arrange
part.
a Colorado Springs trip.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, it's hard to coordinate.
Yeah.
But thank you guys so much for having me on. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
Of course, man. Right on. Thanks, everyone. Goodbye.
Bye.